I'll continue to record this. So I want to first of all welcome you guys to our day four of the CBT in action training. It's the fourth part of our therapist training program, and I'm super excited with the responses that have been coming regarding the value that has been provided from the training itself. I think that has always been the intention to really share this information with people so that not just their own therapeutic practices become even more efficient, but they have the resources and sort of like the details that they need in order to provide effective therapy and treatment. Today is all going to be about CBT, and I know there are people sometimes here who might know. I always consider myself as not an expert on CBT. It is the thing that has really kind of I've had a very curious relationship with CBT primarily cognitive behavioral therapy. I know it's very widely used. I know it has super efficiency as well, which means it is really good in creating results. I know that there is a difference between what is actually done and what how it ought to be done, right? Like, and again, that's why these trainings are being done. कि जो आपको um, efficiency in conducting CBT and इसके जो nuances होते हैं that makes CBT so amazing. I think sometimes that gets lost in the power dynamics that kind of takes place because of CBT as well between the client and the therapist. And I'm really hoping to bring all of those things into light. I wanna just do a little bit of a brief about the changes that have happened in terms of our format as well. We're going to be doing our Zoom session um, first. That it's gonna be available for people so that people can be a little bit more engaging in the Zoom session primarily. And after which after the session, we're going to be uploading this recording on our YouTube page, which is only going to be available on our YouTube page for 24 hours. After which, it's only going to be available for those who have registered for the certifications and the recordings. Okay. So there's a manual. I know I've been talking about a manual, but I've finally got it done and it's finally completed. And I wanted to share this manual with you guys because as participants who have uh, gotten the certification and recordings, you guys will be given this manual. And I want to share this manual first before I go into the CBD side of things. Okay, so I'm just sharing it. Okay. So let me know if you guys can see it, right? So this is the manual that we have designed here. It's got this it's got a lot of content in it, right? And I really wanted to overview the content because I think in order to really understand CBT, we have to really understand the benefits that CBT gives because of the homework it has and because of the work it does. So, for example, this is like a basic congruence chart that we've developed, right? So it's about humanistic, Gestalt, CBT, inner child work, IFS, addiction, somatic work. These are basically set of like systems that you want to evaluate yourself on in terms of, okay, how am I in these kind of modalities, right? Most of these modalities we're going to be covering in. Some of these modalities might be of interest to you. Your own wheel might have something else in it as well. जब आप अपने आप को evaluate करते हैं क्योंकि what does my integration look like as a therapist, right? What kind of practitioner am I? You know, am I a coach that does humanistic, or am I a CBT practitioner that does it in trauma informed CBT primarily? You know, all of those things are some things that you kind of bring into your work. So this wheel really helps you evaluate how far along the journey are you, right? And what do you need to be on that journey? Okay. This is another good resource that we have. And I think for me, one of the reasons why I kind of started to fall, I won't call it in love, but I started to build a relationship with CBT is also because of the resources it provides. It really is a tool that is really aligns the behavior, the cognition, and the emotions together. And my intention is to really kind of make it okay in delivering that, you know, and building up on all the different things that we're building on. How do we kind of do it, right? So this is a feeling tool that is also very beneficial. It helps with humanistic therapy that we have done primarily in the past also. So you start from the center and you work your way out. My intention is to not to go into details with most of the content that we're kind of doing with this manual. My intention is just to provide an overview. And when we will be doing some of the CBT tools, we're going to be using this manual as a resource today specifically. So some of the stuff is really covered. This we are giving you a care plan as well that you can use to evaluate how do you take care of yourself. These are resources that we have gotten from Arizona. This is Carl Rogers again, reading material that you have for content for humanistic. It's meant to just expand on the conversations that we were having last time as well, in terms of what the core competencies are. Today, we're going to be going into CBT, and we're going to be discussing this what do you call it? I call it the hot cross bun, but we're going to be discussing this thoughts, behavior, emotions, and situations in a lot more detail. We're going to be going through this also in terms of challenges in thoughts, negative, and my favorite one is inherent self-worth exercise. So these are different tools that we're going to be using today in our CPT session. And I'm going to show you how do you administer a tool, right? How does it become better for you to actually use this tool. So, and again, this just an overview. This has all the boundary stuff that we were talking about as well. This has other resources that we're not going to be covering today or in this training, such as anger. It's going to have a grief healing feelings letter. It's going to talk about transferences. It's quite in depth. And again, my intention of providing such an in-depth manual is so that everything is in one place available to you, right? So that you are, so that you don't have to worry about where did that content go, right? You have just one place where you can actually find and use some of the content that's there. Okay. I know that internationally also there are like these 1 year courses or these kind of individual courses around CBT as well. I know doctors and medical professionals, psychiatrists, they really like to enjoy using CBT is because CBT is also one of the most researched, used to be one of the most researched modalities as well because it was easy to administer. It has a cause and effect mentality, and it had shown to create a lot of outcome as well. What it really premised on is that the nervous system and sort of like cognition, emotions, and behavior, they all feed off each other. So it's a real kind of triangle that gets created, right? And the more the research has been done on uh, the nervous system, the physiology, the cognition, how it is impacted by stress. The research has been really done on CBT and how to make it even more efficient, right? And that's where relational REBT kind of came out of, right? Where it came out of sort of like the depth of noticing and becoming more informed about emotional regulation. And that's one of the main reasons why REBT, relational emotional behavioral therapy, has so much more regulation tools that are associated with it, right? So it's really about getting up to date about the learnings what are available globally when it comes to CBT because CBT is such a well-known modality and it's taught with such importance in the therapeutic community, specifically in the university community as well. So, if I was to kind of bring it down, and start sort of like some of the real aspects of CBT, the things that I have really adopted into my practice is not just the thoughts, behaviors, emotions, and the situation. It's also Socratic questioning. Socratic questioning is also something that we will be going over in a lot of detail. And I really enjoy Socratic questioning. I think it's a very powerful tool. And I think what Socratic questioning does, it puts the onus of the therapist to improve their craft of therapy. Because when you're asking the client the right question that helps them, go a little bit more understanding about their behavior, right? You ask them what the therapist is then inclined to do is improve their languaging, right? As therapists, our craft is all about the questions we ask. And by focusing on Socratic questioning or modalities like motivational interviewing, you really are getting to learn how to improve your efficiency of work by asking, okay, how am I? what kind of question can I ask to get the client to become more aware about their own behavior and the reasons, cognition, thoughts behind the behavior, rather than being just direct with them? Why don't you just try this out? Right? That kind of statement is ineffective, right? That kind of statement creates shame. That kind of statement creates what do you call it? It doesn't help the client become more congruent about their behavior. What it does, it only asks them to become ashamed, right? Why are you doing it this way? A better way of asking that question, or a better way of having that reflection with the client, is to ask them, okay, what is the benefit behind having this behavior persist? Right? And by thinking about the answer, the client is able to reflect back behind their own motivations or cognitions behind that particular behavior and really help deduct, right? What is the reasoning behind it? And Socratic questionings are something that I think all therapists should be really kind of practicing very kind of actively. So we'll definitely have a certain time where we're going to be, number one, overviewing the cognitive behavior, the relationship between cognition, emotions, and behavior, where we're going to be overviewing some of the tools and assessments that you can use and give to your clients in your CBT sessions, because I think that's one of the main benefits of CBT, particularly are the resources that you can provide to your clients. I'll even share exactly how to make it relevant for them that makes it even more effective. And here in the manual, we've given a lot of tools that we are covering. And number three, we're going to be working on Socratic questioning today, in terms of what kind of questions you can ask and what is the principles, right? Because in every situation, you might have a different question that you will be required to build. So what are the principles that you need to become more informed about in order to become more effective with um, the questions you ask and the results that you want to bring in. Okay, so that's sort of like what our day would be looking like. Let me share with you a little bit of a bias that really got me back into a relationship with CPT. So I have been working on developing trauma-informed skills. The center is based on trauma-informed therapy. It's based on really kind of the premise that thoughts, emotions, and behaviors are predictable. And the reason why they're predictable is because our nervous system has a way of functioning. Becoming trauma informed means that you're much more aware of the functioning that is taking place, right? So, for example, if I'm under stress, what that means is that it will create a shift in my breathing. I will not be breathing diaphragmatically. I'll be breathing much more from a nasally, very active, up chest kind of way, which you might be noticing I'm doing now when I'm in the training. I'm more upregulated. I'm providing that information, right? So that's where I'll be kind of operating from. However, I know that when I'm stressed, I'm in a rush. My body goes into a sympathetic state. Sympathetic means fight or flight. And when I'm in fight or flight, what happens is that my nervous system acts my prefrontal cortex, which is the place where I need which is the place which I need to be online in order for me to have efficient evaluation or cognition, right? So in order for CBT to be effective as a modality, my prefrontal cortex has to be online. However, because of stress, and that could be overt stress, like relationally in the environment, or covert stress, transferentially what's happening between me and the therapist. All of that stuff can impact my nervous system, which by default impacts my prefrontal cortex. Once I'm in fight or flight, my prefrontal cortex goes offline and I'm operating from a limbic brain. And in the limbic brain, I have a fixed way of thinking. I do not evaluate efficiently. I will be instant gratification. I would be having binary thinking. And all of those things are very predictable because of my nervous system. And so when I was learning about the nervous system and how to become trauma informed and how much the brain gets impacted because of the body that we have, I got to really appreciate and understand CBT a lot better, because what it allowed me to do was that as soon as I'm able to get the client to regulate, as soon as I'm able to regulate myself first, all the stuff that we talked about in humanistic and boundaries and all of those things, the stuff that we talked about prior, if I'm able to regulate myself first, which happens because I've done all of that previous work, I can create safety with my client. And when I create safety with my client, the client's prefrontal cortex comes back online. And as soon as the client's prefrontal cortex comes online, we can have a more efficient, effective cognitive question that can help them better evaluate their behaviors and also emotionally regulate. And because of that, all the tools that are available for CBT, they become usable. And so there's a lot of lack of resistance, there's a lot of openness, and there's a lot of efficiency that comes in. And that's one of the other reasons why trauma-informed CBT has become so effective, right? One of the main reasons why trauma-informed CBT is now becoming so effective is because it has a much more clearer structure to kind of to end to end. There's a lot more clear structure. It's a lot more efficient, and it's a lot more result oriented, right? And REBT, relational emotional behavior therapy also kind of follows those same premises about creating regulation through, specifically in regard to the limbic system, to bring the prefrontal cortex online and then allow effective results to kind of take place. Right. So let's start with the main premise, right? So in all of this conversation, we are always having this assumption that enough time has been done to build the relationship and create safety with the client. Those are the two main assumptions that we're going to have while we're moving forward. Because we have 11 weeks to cover, we're on week 4, right? And each week is building on another one, right? My intention is to create integration, right? You find value as you're building to each week. So when you've done your humanistic boundaries, burnout management, and all of those things, and you know how to build an effective relationship with the client, when you've done that building of a relationship, what you do is you then use that relationship to help in getting their cognition online. Once their cognition is online, once their prefrontal cortex is better able to evaluate, they will follow cognitive conversation. They will follow the evaluation. Their mind will be much more open to evaluating what needs to happen, and also there will be much more capacity and delayed gratification as well. Okay. I know that the way I teach this is a little different from the way it's taught at other spaces. I'm opening up the whiteboard just to kind of draw a visual of something, right? So it's this kind of cross that kind of build. Okay. So what happens is, imagine the regulation work is done, client is feeling safe, therapist is feeling safe, and the transference that is there between the client and therapist is overt. The therapist at least knows. So they are able to maintain that sense of safety. Okay. So what happens then is that the client has a certain level of cognition. Okay. The cognition affects their behavior. Behavior affects emotion. Yeah, is it I think I'm kind of like, I think it's emotion first, right? And then behavior. Yeah. Will affect emotion, emotion affects behavior, right? And behavior affects the situation. I know that in a lot of trainings that happen about CBT, they don't add situation, which is the environment. However, the way I've been taught is that you really do add the situation because it really reinforces the cognitions that you have about the situation. So let me give you an example. So, for example, a client comes and they're like, I'm really stuck in this. Uh, let's give a situation that could be a little bit more relatable, right? So imagine a client comes and they're like, I don't think I'm good enough, right? Like, I don't think I'm good enough. And I have this constant issues with my family, and they're consistently fighting, and they don't let me kind of do the things I need to do, in order for me to prove to myself or prove to others. And I am stuck in this kind of situation. Help me out. Right. So just imagine, and this is just a mock, right? Imagine this is the example that you kind of give. So in this situation, once once I've built safety with the client, right? Because when they come to me, they could still be in that activation. They could still be in that sense of, I need to know what the hull is. I need to know what the hull is. I need to know how do I solve this situation right now. I need to know how do I solve this situation right now. I need to know that, how can I make sure that my family gives me space so that I can actually prove myself that I'm going to be someone who can actually do some good, right? Like imagine that's the client that you're kind of coming up with, right? If the client is in that activated aroused state, you know that in fight or flight, prefrontal cortex is offline and the body has a limbic system that is going to be active. And in that state, it is only instant gratification that is accessible to the client. The brain that is required for delayed gratification, evaluation, is not online yet. And thus, me pausing and thinking that, oh my God, let me help you out by giving you this hot cross fun, it's not effective. Why is it not effective? It helps me feel good about myself because I'm the one that's actually giving them something. But however, they will not be able to use it because their brain, that is the prefrontal cortex, is offline because they're in an aroused state. So, one of the first things that we do is that once we build that humanistic relationship, we help them understand that in order for us to really evaluate the situation, we have to come out of this nervous system, which is our fight or flight. So, is it okay just for this hour with me? Can we feel safe together in order for us to evaluate? Client will sometimes ask, safe? What does that mean? What do you mean by safe? And the safe means to be able to notice our breath when it goes up or down. That's it, right? And you are noticing that as I'm talking about that situation, as I'm talking about the client, you will notice that my own nervous system is trying to kind of become more down-regulated. Speed between the words are dropping. Speed is slowing down, becoming even more clearer, softer, breathing more, creating co-regulation, right? And that co-regulation will help to allow the client to bring more safety into the work. And now that the prefrontal cortex, now that they've regulated, and it might not happen instantly, it might take a little bit of an exchange, but imagine that now that we've kind of bypassed or kind of moved away from the rescuing and kind of moved into the actual evaluation, what we're doing now is that we can actually get them to understand, okay, what kind of cognition do you have about yourself? Right? And he can say, I think I'm not good enough. I'm not going to write it down. Just imagine it. Let me try and write it down actually. Right? They can say, I'm not good enough. Okay. And then imagine you ask them, what is the emotion that kind of comes up because of that? I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel, what's another emotion? Less than is a thought. I feel upset. Okay. What is the behavior that comes up because of it? I don't try, right? Or I isolate. My spelling, isolate. Just the intention matters, right? So imagine I isolate. Okay. And what is the situation that creates? I don't participate. I don't participate and participate, and my family is angry at me. And when my family is angry at me, does it reinforce the behavior of or the cognition of me not being good enough? Yes, it does. Right. And so now you have a more complete vicious cycle that is visible to the client. Right. So it's important for us to have that situational element as well that allows us to see how does my behavior create an environment that reinforces my own cognition. right? And our intention, agency is the word, right? Our intention is to give the client that sense of agency about their experience. Okay. And again, this whole system is only available and practical to us if I have my prefrontal cortex online. Okay. If I don't have my prefrontal cortex online, this will just be narrational. What that means is that my body won't understand this. Only my mind will, right? How many times have we gone into therapy or therapeutic work where it's just been cognitively kind of um, expressed, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I think CBT has gotten such a bad rep, is because people have just made it very impersonal, right? And CBT is not meant to be impersonal. Even I was actually reading up on like the actual CBT blueprints or workbooks, and उसके अंदर लिखा हुआ है, like it's written in those manuals and in those workbooks that you have to do CBT once the client is regulated, right? And once the client is regulated, only then will they actually be able to provide that benefit for them, right? So those are some of the main things where you have to really remind yourself that all of this work is being done on a relational basis. None of this is being done without those earlier elements that we've talked about of humanistic being built into it. Because if I wasn't regulated, my prefrontal cortex wasn't online, this will just be passing. I need the client to understand this on a somatic level so that they can actually create the change. So, when, for example, I ask them, what could be an alternate thought, right? What could be an alternate thought? Or they could be like, what is the behavior, or where would you like to start with something that I can kind of say to them, right? Like, where would you like to start like, what is the situation that you're looking for? All right, the situation that you're looking for is that uh, my family understands and supports, right? My family, let's just give like the opposite of they're angry at me is that they understand me and support. Okay. So when they do that, what is the cognition that that would create? Okay. So when they do that, what the cognition that would create is I can I can do things and I believe in myself, for example, right? And imagine if that is the cognition that it creates, what's the emotion that will happen? The emotion that will happen is I will feel happy, I would feel empowered, I will feel that I have more efficient anger, or like, my capacity to work with my healthy anger. Like I have healthy anger. These are all the emotions because I'd be motivated and I'd be passionate and all of those things. Okay. And what's the behavior that will come because of that? All right. So the behavior that will come because of this is I will put effort. I will put in more effort. Okay. So when I put in more effort, right, I'm putting in more effort, and what that does is it actually helps me, it helps my family understand me better. Because it helps my family understand me better, I actually feel good, I feel happy. So now this is another cycle. Okay. So what we've done is we've really shown them the possibility of creating another cycle, right, based on this CBT model, right, which is cognition, emotions, behavior, and situation. Okay. And a lot of people, right, because of the environment they're in or because of the situation that they're in, what they all most of the time I've seen is that they want the environment to be the factor that changes first, right? They want the environment to be a factor that changes first because that is where their hurt and their pain is coming from. Okay. And from any training that anyone has ever done, right? Can anyone change the other person, right? Do I have agency over changing someone else's behavior? Absolutely not. Okay. And what happens is for a lot of people, it's easier for them to understand or imagine the situation that they want, but it's difficult for them to relate with the thoughts or the emotion or the behavior, right? Because there is an externalization of change. And this is where we can really help and them understand that this, even though might be the ideal starting point for you, really can't be in your locus of control, right? It is, and again, this is another tool that you can use, and we have it on the manual also. It cannot be in your locus of control. It can be in your locus of influence. And the only thing that is in your locus of control is your cognition, emotions, and behavior. And I do understand, and again, this is where you will give them because they might need to get certain emotional regulation tools when this kind of confronts them, because there could be grief that could come up, there could be anger that could be coming up, there could be anger that could be projected onto the therapist for making them or creating that awareness for them, which could be painful. That my family is not going to be the one that changes. I have to be the one that puts in the work. And that might feel unfair as well, right? And so all of this becomes part of the CBT model when you have to kind of help them regulate again, because without that, you can't move forward, right? So imagine whatever dysregulation takes place, you allow it to move forward, you allow them to kind of accept eventually through Socratic questioning, So an important Socratic question that could come here is, do you feel, have you tried to influence your family before? Has it worked? Right? That Socratic questioning is more powerful than telling them, कभी family बदली है क्या? Right? Because if you go into that kind of languaging, right, which is very direct, do you think your family is going to change? It's shame driven, right? So you can't ask shaming questions, right? Because, or statements, because if I do that, I again create unsafety in the relationship, creates the body to either go into parasympathetic freeze response or sympathetic fight or flight. They might not come to therapy, but it does not create evaluation, which helps bring the prefrontal cortex online, right? I have to create questions that are evaluative in nature to help them recognize that is this an endeavor that is worth putting more effort in. Once that work has been done through Socratic questioning, I can really go back into asking, amongst all three of these things, which do you feel is the closest to change? Do you feel you can put in effort first, which will by default create an environment which will create the cognition, right? Or do you think you can put the emotion first in, or do you think you can put the cognition first in? Right? Any one of these things will create the cyclic shift that is required. And then by asking them to do so also, you're also making them more empowered into this process. Because then what you're doing is you're really helping them recognize that they are an agent to change, right? And that is what will help. However, only possible when their mind has the capacity for delayed gratification. If the mind does not have the capacity for delayed gratification, if they're stuck in the grief of the family not shifting, if they're stuck in kind of if they're stuck in secondary gain also, right? Because there could also be an avoidance of responsibility that could be taking place. So you can see, right, like the levels of influence that is impacting cognition has to be in your peripheral. If it is in your peripheral कि ये चीजें cognition को impact करती हैं या dysregulation की वजह से cognition को impact करती हैं, then in order to do effective CBT that does create a difference, this needs to be worked on, or this needs to be kind of in your mind. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm really trying to reinforce this again and again. That CBT is not one dimensional. CBT is not just about you giving tools and homeworks and assignments and assessments. It's about understanding cognition, behaviors, and emotion from a lens which is updated, which is nervous system based, which really helps you create effectiveness of treatment and effectiveness of implementation. Because now, when I will ask them, okay, in order to change cognition, do you have tools that you have used in the past that can actually that has worked for you? No, I don't have tools. Actually, I'm not sure. How does this work? Can you let me know? Sure. Some of the tools that you can use is Melissa Pierce. She's a really good person on YouTube that talks about changing cognition. Joe Dispenza is another person that can talk about changing cognition. Would you be open to kind of watching some of their videos before we kind of start about how we can do it in the session? Would that be okay? Yeah, sure. Right. So now that they have agency and they bought into it, they made it their own process in terms of wanting to kind of work through it. That's what will help them complete your homework. That is what will help them create the shift outside of the room, which is super effective. However, in order for that to have happened, the therapist would have to have had the patience or the understanding of regulation to make that difference. Yeah. I do want to ask the online participants if they have any questions regarding the model so far. In regards to the CBT aspect of it, the situational aspect of it. If they have any questions, particularly regarding this, they can even just put it on the chat box and we can kind of add it. Okay. So as we move forward, right? So now that we have gotten a little bit of an understanding about the prerequisites of doing CBT, right? The prerequisites of doing CBT is making sure the prefrontal cortex is online. But in order for you to do that, you have to have an understanding of creating safety, right? And that happens not just in environmental safety, because, for example, what I've seen sometimes is that people get a little confused that how can I be safe when there is such an intense situation happening with me in my life at that moment? Okay. It's a very common question that comes up. My family is giving me stress today. Then, if they're giving me stress today, how can I feel safe? Right? And what you do is you again reduce the timeline. Can you it's okay and it's completely understandable for you to not feel safe outside. It's a really stressful situation for you. Is it okay if we kind of develop some safety in the room right here, right now with me? Right? And what that does is it allows their brain to not focus on the problem consistently because that is the job of the brain to focus on the problem and kind of find the solution. So we're not upset with the brain. Okay, why is it consistently thinking about the problem? No, that's the job. But what we're doing is we're creating an area that is smaller in timeline just for this half an hour. Is it okay if we can kind of just learn on building safety in this half an hour? That's it. And if we can do that, can we find other places where we can learn how to build this safety so that the brain can be more online in order for us to make better, more evaluative decisions and also sometimes change the habit of whatever we want to or be able to achieve what we want to achieve. Okay. So that's the prerequisite. How well can you create safety with your client? And how much do you know about the prefrontal cortex in order for us to actually administer the tools that we need? Once they are done, then we can create those kind of hot cross buns, that kind of cognition, emotions, behavior, and situation. And then we can kind of really find a link between what is the cognition that serves us, what is the cognition that doesn't serve us anymore, and be more evaluative about it, right? Because it's all about cognitive evaluation. Okay. Once that has been delivered, then what we can do is we can really start to do tools with them, right? And that is where I think CBT starts to really shine, is because they have certain tools that you can use, and these are going to be some of the tools that are going to be given to you in your manual also. Some of them are CBT tools, some of them are resources for other sessions that we're going to be having in the future also, and also in the past as well, the stuff that's that. This is what we were talking about, the behavior, emotions, and situations. So if you want to create shift in cognition, So these are some of the, this is a really good tool that you can use. And I'm going to invite everyone as I'm going through it with you guys, because that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to just be going through these different tools and administrating them in a time that is relationally safe for them. You can actually make it a lot better. Right. So number one, this is a tool that you can do once you created relational safety and once you created that understanding that all of these tools are going to be done in a regulated nervous system so that we can actually not just talk about it and create awareness, but integration also in our bodies so that change can take place. Okay. So, challenging negative thoughts, right? So, depression, poor self esteem, anxiety are often a result for irrational narration thoughts. Some who are regularly received positive feedback at the work might feel that they might be horrible at their job because of one criticism, because their external environmental messages do not match their internal environment or their cognitive messages, right? So, here's the tool that you can use. Is there substantial evidence for my thoughts? Right? And you can be like, yes, right? Like if I was to do it in a dysregulated state, I'll be like, absolutely. There's 100% evidence, right? But if I'm in a regulated state, I can kind of say, yes, there is some evidence for sure. Um, but it's not as big as if I was in a dysregulated state, but it is there. Okay. Is there evidence contrary to my thought? Yes, actually, right? So it's not all bad. Actually, there was a time when something good also happened. So it's not all bad. Okay. Am I attempting to interpret the situation without all the evidence? Yes, I might be, right? Because I might have recently the most updated situation that happened was that situation. But if I was to take a step back and look at it from the whole lens, it's not all bad, but there is a percentage, it's 40% good and 60% bad, and probably that's what it is. What would a friend think about this situation? I think my friend would think that I'm actually more upset than about the situation because of the frequency that has happened. So what I'm actually dealing with is a lot of like sadness, right? So it's more than just negative situations. What I'm really dealing with is the extent of sadness that I have. If I look at the situation positively, how would it be different? Again, the only thing that I feel would be of value is can I learn from this? Can I make sure I can improve myself? That's the only situation, that and or can I learn how to set boundaries better? Or can I, if I can learn something from this, then it's going to be something which I feel is going to be it's going to be a positive. And I think that's how I can look at differently at it, right? And so, what is the matter? What is this? What this matter? Would this matter a year from now? How about 5 years from now? A year from now, I'm already deciding to quit my job, so I'm not sure if it would matter. I think 5 years from now, how other people see me, I don't think so. I hope not. I think more effectively, it will be more effective if I was. I think on the timeline of 5 years, I don't think the situation would matter. What would matter is what I do about this situation. Okay. What I've just gone through is a rough example of how you take a person through, or what would their answers be. However, if I was dysregulated, or if I did not have any emotional regulation tools, what my brain would do is all bad, all bad, all bad, all bad. Why? Because nervous system, which is in fight or flight, or dorsal, or that means in freeze, has binary thinking. So, and it will always have lack of evaluation. So this whole assessment, I would not be able to do if I was not in a regulated state. If I was too emotionally invested in the situation, or if I was too emotionally involved in the situation, then I would be all bad, all bad, all bad. And so what will happen is that this tool will backfire, right? And as a therapist, I do not want that to be set up, right? Like I want my clients to actually find these tools to be useful, right? And in order for them to have that, they need to be in the right headspace for that. If I use this tool as a way of avoiding the emotions that the client is going through, which is hurt or sadness. Because I, as a therapist, don't know the tools that are required for emotional regulation, then what happens is, or without emotional regulation, without narration, and in a lot of REPT books, there's lots of regulation tools that are given, and I highly recommend you guys kind of finding your own ones. What will happen is that I'm using this as a mask, right? And I can't use this as a mask. I have to use this very congruently in terms of what I can provide or I can deliver for them. So it's very important that when you're using these tools, you make sure that there is a lot of safety in the person, or at least even if it's not in the person, it's in the relationship, so that this does not become a negative reinforcer for them, and which is going to happen if they're in a dysregulated state. So that's just another additional tool that you can use. Okay. I think I'll give one more. I'll give one more tool before we move on to like the Socratic questioning parts, right? And so the other tool I want to give to you guys, it's called inherent self-worth. And again, I recommend that you guys can do this tool with me as you guys are going into this process. You guys can do it either overtly, or those who have registered for the Zoom links and the recordings, they'll be getting this drive with this link as well, with all of these activities or resources with them. Okay. So inherent self-worth is another tool, right? That again can help them recognize their own cognition. Okay. However, this is a very powerful tool, right? Because it is based on the values that everyone's worth is inherent, meaning that I don't have to do anything to either be better than or less than other people. I am not better than or less than anyone. I might have experience difference, I might have resources different, but value wise, everyone is the same, right? And so sometimes what happens is that cognition becomes impacted by value or trauma or stress that have been given in developmental stages, right? So people have been given developmental kind of stressors or reinforcers in which they are felt to believe that they're less than or better than other people. And what this tool specifically is designed to do is that it is designed to help you become more aware about your cognition regarding how you are, in some ways, maintaining that less than or better than mindset. So let me take you through the tool, right? Again, prerequisites: healthy relationship with the client, interpersonal relationship with the client. Prerequisites is that there's an awareness about cognition. There's a language that has been developed in the therapeutic work that helps you understand. Okay, this is what I need to be mindful for, right? That this is the work that we're kind of doing in terms of, in order for me to help the client through this process, I need them to be more aware of their regulation so that they can have their prefrontal cortex online. All right. So, okay, inherent self-worth, my characteristics, which are positive. Okay, I feel like I'm a hard worker. I feel like I am someone who cares for other people. Those are some of the positive characteristics I have. Okay. How I use my strength to feel better than other people. Okay. So you can even see that the way the question is, it can evoke a sense of discomfort, right? And so as the therapist, you are already kind of keeping an eye on the regulation, because as soon as they dysregulate, prefrontal cortex goes online. So imagine if they're able to maintain regulation. How I use my strength to feel better than other people. I try to make sure that I outwork other people, right? So that I feel better about myself, right? So I use my strength. um, how do I use my strength to feel better than other people? Yeah, because I think I tell myself that because I work harder than other people, like, that's how I feel better about it. Okay. What are some of the strengths that other people have? Right? Other people have good skills of connecting with others, right? Other people have good skills about and other people have good skills about the way they maintain relationships. Other people have good skills about regulation. So you can see already that even with as I'm doing it, it's easier for me to see the strengths in others as compared to seeing the strengths in myself. Right? So that again is a tool that you can use that gives you more information about the cognition that the client has. Okay. And how do I use another person's strength to put myself down? Right? So how do I use other people's strengths? So for example, they are better communicators, they are better at relationships, they're better at being able to kind of connect. So what do I do is I tell myself that I can't do that. So I isolate and I kind of make myself feel even more alone. Right? So again, so this helps me recognize how I'm using this. Right? So okay, what are some of my negative characteristics? Right? So my negative characteristics are my negative characteristics are I don't communicate as much as I should. I procrastinate. I delay things in terms of wanting to kind of and I overcommit. Right? So imagine these are some of the negative characteristics. How do I use my negative characteristics to feel worthless or less than other people? Because I delay and I don't kind of overtly connect with other people, I feel less than because I try to avoid relationships or I try to avoid connecting with other people, and what that does is makes me feel alone and isolated, and I feel like those are some of the characteristics I have. What are the negative characteristics of another person? Right? I think that they are angry. I think they get easily angry. I think they get easily upset, or I think there's lack of emotional regulation. Those are some of the negative characteristics they have. Right? And how do I use those negative characteristics to put that other person down? Because of that negative characteristics, what happens is that the other person doesn't have the what I think is that they don't have the emotional capacity to have emotional conversations and all of those things. And so when the client brings this in, what you see is that as an individual, you are using your strengths as a way of bringing yourself up, and sometimes you're using other people's strengths as a way of bringing yourself down, and the inverse of it also. Sometimes what you're using is you're using your weaknesses to put yourself down, and what you're doing is that you're using other people's weaknesses to put yourself up. And what you recognize is that that is not true, right? All of that is a response that you have because of the experiences that the person has had. And what you recognize is that you're neither better than or less than anyone else. Yeah. You're no matter whether your strengths do not make you better than other people and your weaknesses do not make you less than other people. Other people's strengths don't make them better than you, and other people's weaknesses don't make you better than them. Right? And when you recognize the story that you tell yourself, that is what what you're able to kind of recognize from this particular toolkit. And what that does is it helps you recognize that your esteem, your self-esteem is inherently present in you. And so one of the things that I always felt was that this particular toolkit is something that has been very overtly beneficial, especially when you're doing self-esteem work. Because self-esteem work for clients, particularly, is very innate in nature, right? So, this particular tool, when you do it with your clients, again, while maintaining emotional regulation, right, it's really good to recognize the competitive or the comparisons that kind of come in because that's what we're all in some way or the other kind of doing, and it's kind of having trouble with our esteem. You know how other people has these strengths, it makes me put myself down. Sometimes I have strengths in which I try to put the other person down. I have weaknesses in which I make the other person better than myself, and I use sometimes the other person's weaknesses to make myself better than them. None of that is like real. And that's according to Pia Melody. She has an amazing book called Facing Codependency, and that's where these manuals kind of come from. And it's a really amazing tool that's there. Okay. Boundaries, this is what we were talking about. That's the stuff that we have covered already. I know this was the last tool, but I've got one more which I felt that, and I'm not going to go into detail of it, but this is another tool that I think we can use specifically, which I feel it's really beneficial. about it. And you can see the stamp of Trauma Rates and Wellness Center there as well, but the office is quite old, right? So this is our old office that we were there. Now it's not the exact place that we were there. All right. So we have one tool for self-esteem. We have a tool for what you call it, the first tool that we did, and now this is the tool that we have. So negative cognitions, we have a tool for self-esteem work. Then we have a tool, this is also behavioral, boundaries particularly, and you can use that. We've done that. We've covered boundaries particularly in a separate section in quite a lot of detail. Now we are talking about anger, right? And anger through CBT work is also quite effective, right? And also these are specific tools and resources that become available to you, right, through this training. However, I do feel that it's very important that you're using these tools relationally, right? And I cannot stress this enough as many times as possible that all of these tools are used as relationally as possible, right? So what does that mean? Right? So you can see that any one of these tools can be activating as well, right? And in order for us to help the client genuinely use this, not as a source of compliance, we ourselves need to be have used these tools, right? So that's one of the things that I encourage people to do. That when you get these kind of manuals, or when you get these kind of resources, try it on for yourself. Know how it feels like. The reason why I'm trying to do it for myself is I really want to show it to you that as a person doing it, how does it genuinely feel to use these tools on your own self first? Because once you use it for yourself, you will know where your pain points are. And then you will recognize and keep an eye on the client. Yeah, are those in alignment with their pain points? Do I have to step in or do I have to just wait? Again, remember, do not step in as a source of as a source of rescuing. Right? Step in if you need it, if you feel like there's an intervention required to create prefrontal cortex regulation. Okay. Okay. Now we have a tool for anger, and I'm just going to overview it, and I highly recommend. This is an amazing tool. It's a three-part tool, particularly for anger, and it's something that is very useful, right? At least it's been useful to me and the people I've kind of worked with. So anger specifically comes out of three things, right? Anger comes when we're feeling threatened. Anger comes when we are feeling when our expectations are not met, and anger comes when you're using it as a drug and a power. Okay, I could have done a separate day on anger, but I do feel like just helping you guys see how you guys can use resources and specifically like these kind of tools that can help shape a person's cognition, which helps them emotionally regulate, which helps them change their behaviors. And if they change their behaviors, their situation changes, which reinforces their particular thought process also. Right. So with particularly this one, what happens is I'm just gonna, yeah. We'll be getting these materials through our email. Yes, absolutely. So those people who are on the Zoom training right now, you will be getting all of these materials with you. It will be on your, we will either send it to you via email or via Drive. You will have the whole manual with all the 98 pages in it, and all of them will be available. If for the YouTube people who are willing to kind of wanting to register, you guys can set up a call or have you guys can just fill out the registration form for the finalization. It's a 15,000 rupees for all the recordings, the certification, and the manual also, right? You get all of these things. And I think these things are definitely, especially as you move forward in the manual, it's quite a lot of content that we'll be covering in the future weeks to come also. Okay. So anger as a drug, or anger, if you're feeling threatened, is the first thing. What it does is this particular manual. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to invite you guys to do it on your own. It gives you a lot of the content first. It like sets up the premise, right? And then it asks you question about it, right? Just to rough, right? So, for example, first think of a situation that has been an angry trigger for you, and once that comes up, repeat and it comes up repeatedly or has led to a serious consequences because of your angry actions. Describe the situation. So you're really asking yourself to set up, right? Then study the situation and identify the threats and that triggered your anger, right? Was it a threat to your physical well-being, either your safety or your long-term health? Was it a financial or a material security, your emotional security, for example, threat to an important relationship, a threat of frustration, a threat of your self-esteem, right? Or a challenge to your beliefs about your ways that of your own way that the world works, right? Because we can even get angry because we feel that our way of looking at the world is being challenged as well. And that creates anger also. And so, what these questions do is that it takes you through that process of evaluating how your behavior is coming and integrating it from an emotional lens also, right? So, I think this is a really good tool. Now, think of a situation, think of a solution that would give you a better result and cause fewer problems from than anger, which may be your first reaction. Describe the solution and how you would feel to put into action, really helping you give details about it, right? After you've thought about your triggers and the solution, how are your feelings of anger about the situation changed, right? Do you feel more in control, right? And specifically for this particular manual or this particular tool, it really helps if you really put a real situation in, because it really gets you in terms of the results that you can get, right? Because if you really start to do it, even I'm hoping as people are listening to me talk, they're putting some kind of solutions into it and they're noticing the shift in their body. And that's something I'm going to invite you guys to do. Always keep an eye on both. How is your mind? How is your emotions? How is your thinking? Right? Whenever you feel angry building up, if you can pause when your emotional regulation, ask yourself, what's the threat? Evaluation, right? What else can I do about it? Evaluation, right? You can change your patterns and take control of your feelings and actions. It is hard at first, but it gets easier with practice. In the beginning, it will help to have a reminder, sticky notes, and all of those things. Think of someone whom you trust to help you control your anger. Explain to that person what you're doing and ask him or her to remind you of to find a threat whenever you start getting angry. In turn, you must commit to yourself not to turn your anger against the person when he or she does this. Who is that person and when will you talk with him or her about this? And you can see a therapist can be that person, and ideally, someone else outside of the therapy room can be that person, because that will really help them become more independent of the therapeutic relationship, right? So, or you can imagine sort of like the tool that this is that really helps you evaluate your thinking, your behavior, and your emotions, and how it impacts you, right? So, and I'll be very honest, these are some of the tools based on your situations. Every therapist needs to have a toolkit. Every therapist. My intention is to really enhance your toolkit through all of this stuff. But I'll be very honest, this is like I sometimes feel like I'm limited by these toolkits, right? Like yahan tak main pahuncha. This is how far I have been able to get to, right? It took me 10 years to accumulate all of this in terms of a manual. Okay, this is the toolkits I was able to get to, right? It shouldn't take another person 10 years to get to this manual. I should take another person 3 4 years just to enhance this manual, right? And I would invite you guys, right? Enhance it, enhance, find your own things. There are resources available online for free. Enjoy, right? And remember, in order to do all of these tools, you have to have regulation and emotional safety and understanding of what the cognitive is, so that when you administer it, it's not being done on a superficial level. It's actually creating the change that you're requiring. All right. So we're done with one, which is anger as a threat. Now we're going to do the second one, and which is going to be anger out of unmet expectations. This is my favorite one because it happens a lot for me when my expectations are not met and my nervous system is going upset. Like, oh my God, I thought that it will happen, and how come? There is value in reading this, right? Because it really sets the stage up. However, just for the interest of time and just because of the fact that I want to spend time on Socratic questioning as well, I'm not going to read this in detail, but I would highly recommend you guys kind of do that, right? Please think back to the most recent time. you when you got angry. So you can see it's all memory-based recollection, right? And this is out of unmet expectation. Just a little bit more about the unmet expectations part, right? Human beings need expectations to manage reality, right? Like for example, sun rises from the east, sets in the west, wherever, right? Like whatever. जहाँ से rise होता है वहां से, right? Like that's an expect. Sun will rise, sun will set. Is an expectation I have. If that expectation is not met, I will lose reality, right? Oh my God, sun did not rise from the place where it's supposed to rise to. We need these kind of pillars, right? Which makes our reality there. The one that wounds us the most is my parents love me, right? Or my parents have the capacity for emotional regulation. For some, that might be an expectation that is met. For some, that might be an expectation that is met partially. For some, that is not an expectation that is met. But as children, we all have these kind of internal expectations kind of come up, right? And it's important for us to be aware that these expectations are sometimes what we have in order to create reality. As a child, I need to know I am safe by the people who are supposed to take care of me. Sometimes they have it sorted, sometimes they don't have it sorted. But whatever those things are, it will create anger sometimes, or it will create expectations which don't get met. I've heard this question a lot, that aren't people supposed to have expectations? Yeah, you're supposed to have expectations. That's how the mind is designed to work. And as you grow up, you're supposed to have an evaluation as well, whether this expectation is serving you or not, right? Because what happens is people get lost with the binary, होना चाहिए, नहीं होना चाहिए. होना चाहिए. Expect good things from people, expect things to kind of happen, and also evaluate whether that is an expectation that is worth keeping for you or not. Someone also told me expectation is a premeditative resentment. Okay, that means that expect if you have an expectation from someone, you're setting them up for to have a resentment, because sometimes what happens is resentments don't get expectations don't get fulfilled, and that sets you up for resentment, that sets you up for anger, and that's the whole reason why we're doing this one. Okay, so I'm just taking you through the question, the value the questions have. Right? What was the event or the trigger of your anger? What was the event that triggered your anger? Something you felt you should not have happened the way it did. In other words, did you have an expectation that something else should have happened? And again, remember, this can create emotions, right? And when it creates emotions, we pause the tool, we allow emotional regulation to take place so that our prefrontal cortex can come online. And once that has happened, and once that has happened safely, then we go back to this. Our intention is not to create activation. Our intention is to create resources, right? And that's what this tool will do. What was your expectation? It could be a simple one. I thought my friend will not. I thought my friend will pay my money back. Let's keep it lighter, right? I thought my friend will give my money back. Okay. What was the expectation? Friends give their money back, right? Why did you expect what you did? And was that what has normally happened before in similar situations? No, people have not given me my money back. Some people have, some people haven't, XYZ. Often we expect things that experience tells us are unlikely, expecting someone who has been late many times to show up on time. It's my problem. So yeah, expecting people to be polite in rush hour traffic when they are more often to be aggressive or impatient. Expecting to win the lottery when you know that the odds are overall millions against us. Expecting the police officers to not pull us over even though when we were driving at a 20-mile over the speed limit. Did you expect something that wasn't likely to happen in the situation you've been writing about? Yeah, I did think that my friend, I knew that other people had told me that he had taken money from them and also not given back. I thought that our relationship would be different, right? Was your expectations unrealistic. A bit, yes, because I thought we were supposed to be, and that was like, I thought we were supposed to be much more closer, but we weren't, right? How would you recreate your expectations had been based on what had happened most often rather than what you felt should have happened? Would you have had more peace in mind and less anger? If I had listened to other people and if I had heard them in similar situations also, I think I would have been a lot more safer, right? And you can see, I don't want to read. Let's read it, right? As you may now be seeing, your expectations are often just plain mistakes in our thinking. If we learn not to make that kind of mistakes, we feel unpleasant or surprised. Acceptance is more comfortable than resentment. Remember, to accept something doesn't mean that we are saying that we like it or that we believe it's right. Acceptance just means that we're admitting that things are the way they are and deciding to deal with reality rather than with our fantasies. If you find yourself facing some situation again, and based on your expectations on reality, what will your reaction be if the same thing happens? Now, if someone else asks me for money, I will ask around if whether I should be able to give it to other people or not, or I should actually decide to say no. So you can see, even just by going through these questions, my mindset particularly is shifting. And you can see there's so much more depth to come in this, right? And so by the time, if a person does this on an emotionally regulated basis, there's so much value that comes into it. All right. Last one, right? And I'm just gonna go through this one, I hope, as quickly as possible. Is anger as a drug, right? And again, so we have anger out of threat when we're backed into a corner. We get angry. We have anger when our expectations are not met because expectations help us manage reality. And what happens is sometimes our feeling comes into the play, but we it's called the attribution error we both there, where one event generalized to the way we see people. So it's important for us to be very mindful of our attribution errors. So anger caused by unmet expectations, number two. And finally, we have anger as a drug, which is number three. So yeah, and anger as a drug is basically when we're using anger to feel more empowered in situations. Because anger is a sympathetic state. You feel like right. For a lot of people, what happens is sometimes that when they feel less than, they go into anger to feel power, right? And that's what happens. So anger can become addictive as well, and people can use anger as a drug also, which means that they're using it to feel better consistently, right? And I won't go too into this, but this again shows you the questioning that will help you actually see these things in action and again reframe your cognition also. So you can see most of the tools that are being given are designed for cognitive reframing or cognitive shifts in the question. The only thing that is required to give it, and I've said this like 100 times, and I'm probably going to say this like 100 more times throughout the course of this training, it requires relational attunement. It requires, in order for you to do this safely, you need to have congruence, unconditional positive regard, empathy. You need to be ready. You need to be regulated. You need to have your prefrontal cortex online. Transferences need to be cleared up. You don't have to be like, oh my God, do I have to step in to rescue? Oh my God, this is going to overwhelm the client. All of this stuff is there and designed as tools based on your therapeutic judgment to kind of help them use it, right? That's what this is all about. Okay. So all of this is being done, and so this is some of the tools that we're going to give. This is a feelings chart, which is again done when we're going to be doing our grief day, and also the listening format, right? So that's where it's at. All right. So so many tools, right? So many resources, right? And again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I'm really hoping that as you guys use these tools and as you guys become more comfortable with this stuff, you can really, really, really start benefiting from CBT because I am now like fanning over CBT because once I've realized that you just need to stay and create that prefrontal cortex online, emotional regulation, therapeutic alliance, and then you have all of these resources that can come, a lot of change happens. I've seen really good change take place. All right. Another thing that I feel that CBT got right, and on a really amazing level is like Socratic questioning. Okay. Socratic questioning is going to be our final topic that we're going to be covering. It's really amazing. Okay. Socratic questioning is something that I've also covered, not covered, but I've kind of hinted on in the humanistic training that was taking place also. That you're using a lot of your body to really interpret what is the information that is coming up, right? So, there is a lot of background work that's happening as you're present with the client, right? So there's these dual cones of awareness, is what Andrew Huberman calls it. You have one eye on the room, on the client, and on one eye, you have your internal supervisor. It's the reference from a book, Becoming Learning from a Patient. It's a humanistic, person-centered book, which identifies that as you do your supervision session, there's an internalized supervisor that kind of gets developed also. So you have these kind of two cones of awareness that you're working with. Okay. And in that two cones of awareness, you have the relationship and the conversation that is taking place and the evaluation that's happening. So how does that take place, right? So you have a client, and again, I'm just gonna try and role play this out so that you guys have an understanding of questioning, right? Like, how do you question that allows the client to induct or deduct what's happening, go deeper into the work. So, for example, you have a client that comes in and says, um, I'm having trouble in my I'm having trouble in my relationships, right? With my school friend. I'm having trouble in my relationship with my school friend, university friend. I'm having trouble in my relationship with my university friends. I'm finding it difficult to connect with them. Right? So imagine that's the premise of the work that's kind of coming. Okay. So I can't ask, so I'll tell you two things here, right? I can ask, tell me more detail, right? So that I get a little bit more of an overview. Sure. Or I can say to the client, okay, how is that, how do I say this, right? Like I can say to the client that it's sometimes um, challenging, right? So for example, client comes in because I'm having a relationship with my friends. What is the direction I can go with the work? I can take history, right? Chances of history taking will help me understand the work better. Risk of re-traumatization could happen. Client can go into study. Okay. I can ask, my intention is to build a relationship. That's one direction I can go into. That's the direction that most people get trained in also. Is that what they start doing is they start taking 3 sessions for history taking, tell me about your childhood, tell me about your own experiences. There's this preset expectation that they have is that only by knowing the client's whole history about his whole life, I can get to know why it's happening right now. Psychodynamic, technically, we'll go into psychodynamic when we do that day in detail, but not true, right? Especially when the therapeutic alliance is not there, it's really risky to go into history taking because it can create flooding. And you don't want the client to flood, you want the client to be evaluative in CBT particularly. Okay. Another option becomes really helping them understand, okay, what are some of the challenges that you've had? What are some of the challenges that you're facing currently that could be contributing or causing this, right? So really much more in the present, right? And that question was a Socratic question, or that question really helps you understand the client better. It doesn't take you to history where the client is just narrating. It becomes relational in conversation where you're actually more effective in the questioning that you're asking, right? So that's another layer that can kind of happen, right? And so in CBT particularly, you can build the relationship by staying in the current cognition or current environment that the person is. You don't have to do history taking. That again, I just want to put a disclaimer in before I kind of get um, uh, challenged nonstop. Is I know that history taking is what you've been taught. It's sort of like what's being taught currently as well. I personally don't follow that premise because I think that history taking without relational safety is unsafe and can cause activation, right? I've also heard therapists say that how will I get to know the client's work if I don't know anything about the client? Technically, that is the therapist's own personal anxieties about uncertainty and unfamiliarity, right? Simple as that, right? Like in my opinion, I want to say that in my opinion, right, that a therapeutic work does not require a therapist to know the client's history. What it requires is the therapist to know the client, right, and what they're going through right now, right? And once that relational safety has been built, please 100% go and do more deeper exploration so that you can kind of help the client get to a better understanding of their own self and better self-awareness. However, history taking 100%, like in the start of the session, I would highly encourage you guys not to go into that. I would highly encourage you guys to kind of share the current situation right now in terms of the presenting complaint that has been brought forward and how can you kind of move forward with that. That's number one. Right. Number two is so Socratic questioning will help you build that relationship even more. Right. So, for example, okay, so you've gone into asking the client. So the client said more about, okay, I'm having trouble building relationships in university. All right, so you kind of ask the question about, okay, what are some of the challenges? What are some of the challenges that you're noticing coming up for you? So what are some of the challenges that you're noticing coming up for you? You ask the question that caused them to be more specific, right? I did not say I don't understand what you're saying. Can you be more specific? Right? That was more, that's shaming, right? What are some of the challenges that are coming up for you? Can you tell me more details? Right? That goes, okay, so yes, this is a new school university for me. I don't really know a lot of people, right? I'm not really sure of how I've been able to, how I will manage. The stresses are too high, the exams are too close. There's a lot of pressure on me. I'm also on a scholarship, right? So all of these are my problems, right? Again, relational paraphrasing, right? I hear I hear the amount of challenges that you're facing. Which one do you feel is the one that is creating the most stress for you right now? Okay. Again, you can see, right? Like the client gave their premise for whatever their work is. By again reflecting back, paraphrasing helps me build relationship, right? By adding that and then asking another Socratic question helps me reduce their scale, right? I'm helping them reconstruct the way they think of all of these problems. The one that I feel the most like troubled by is my like I feel less than. I feel like I feel like when it comes to coming into this university, I think everyone else has all of these different kind of things they have and items they have and they have all of these kind of things and I feel a lot of social pressure and I feel a lot of these social hurts. That's where I feel. I feel less than. I think that's my main problem, right? Because it really makes me kind of question whether this place is right for me or whether I'll be able to adjust into these kind of situations, right? You can see super valid came from the client was able to self-reflect, came from the question, quality of the question I asked, right? And the quality of the question is what every single therapist should always ask themselves. Is this the best quality I could have come up with? If not, you practice run. How can I improve? How can I improve? How can I improve? How can I ask a different question? How could I have gotten it better? Do have that kind of mindset, right? Okay, so client says, I'm actually kind of, this is the social pressure is what I'm going into, right? And so I pick up, right? There is emotional regulation that is required, right? I also pick up that there is hurt and wounding and all of those things are there. So use that information that is in my back of my mind that I'm observing in the session. And with regulation, I evaluate which direction should I go into, right? And I can, if I'm a humanistic therapist, I can go into the feeling arson. It seems that that situation, could evoke some feelings also, right? Or there could be certain feelings that are coming up. Is it okay if I use the feelings chart? Remember the feelings chart I saw? And if you could tell me which feeling is coming up for you right now as you're talking about that situation. That's one direction, emotional direction, which can help me lead into emotional regulation, which can help me lead into emotional resourcing, right? Before we work on the esteem and all of those things. Number one. Another tool is, another direction I can go into. If I wasn't going to the emotional direction, another direction I can go into would be the question I can ask is like, has have you ever how have you generally been with adjustments to new places? Okay. Have has what are the some of the have you ever have you adjusted to any situation before in the past? Okay, that's a more of a historical question that I can ask, basing them based on like, okay, do you have any past experiences regarding these things? Both are appropriate, and there could be like a million more directions you can go into based on your own personal therapeutic style or alignment of work, right? You feel like you're more emotionally inclined, REBT, go for emotional regulation work. You want to go for more gestalt or psychodynamic work, go for more past work, right? If I go into like trauma informed work, or I go into kind of like, if I remove trauma informed, like if I was to go into any kind of work, I would kind of ask, have you kind of gone into any kind of change before? Client could be like, no, this is my first time, right? This is my first time actually leaving my home and actually leaving my environment. This is the first time I'm coming from a place of coming into this new kind of environment, right? So now, what kind of question do I ask, right? So so I would now go into sort of like, so how so I would go into grief, right? So do you miss your home? Right? Do you miss the environment? Is that the do you miss the environment that you lived in? Okay. And because there is a change that has happened, I know when we will do grief work, that's where the direction of the work and we can go into. But you can see, not once have I asked the client or advised the client on anything. Not once have I said something which is not intentional in nature. All of this work that I'm doing is based on the Socratic questioning that I'm asking, that's helping the client become more aware of what their process is. Okay. And that's how it works. And that's one of the main reasons why I feel it's so powerful is because if you have the right questions, right, you can really get them to do so much work in such a little amount of time. Because side rent, okay, therapy costs money, right? And it's important for therapists to be very efficient and effective with the time that they have. And that will only happen when they have practiced the skill of therapy so that in the least amount of sessions, the most amount of work can happen because therapy costs money and it's not cheap for everyone, right? I think in this culture, in Pakistan in particular, it is so important for therapists to be congruent and efficient in their work because the better you get, right? And you don't have to worry about how will my center run or how will my livelihood run because the better you get, the more referrals you will get, and you will get a waiting list and you will get clients. However, you have to put in the work and really have that mindset. Okay, what was that the most effective question I could have asked? Or could there have been a more effective question? And you can see with just this little demo, right, that I did with just with this kind of client work, you can see that the amount of work that could have happened, because eventually what you will realize is that there's grief of missing home that's causing the body to go into dorsal, not allowing the body to go into social engagement and moving into feeling safe in this new relationship, right? That would have eventually been the work. And this is a complete mock demo example, right? But there is so much value in asking questions, the right questions that are meant to be safe in nature, not shaming in nature. None of these questions are, hopefully, I asked them, none of them had the intention of creating any kind of shame. हम तनकीद नहीं कर रहे, right? Like I'm not asking them, why are you not doing it this way, right? Or have you ever tried this? Why haven't you tried this before? So I never, you can, Never ask a why question. Don't ask a why question ever. Never, right? Never ask a why question, right? Always ask a. It's a better value to ask a how question. How did you come up with this? What helped you come up with this evaluation? What helped you make the decision to choose this school? What was how did you decide to come here? What thoughts did you have about the future that allowed you to make this decision to come here? What resources do you have already that said that it's safer to choose here and take this jump? All of these are questions. And all I can be very honest, all of them I'm coming out. They're all being. I'm saying them all out right now. It's not like I had prepped them. What I had prepped myself for was my intention. Right. My intention is to get to know the client better. Right. My intention is not to see client is a problem. I need to solve their problem. That's not the intention. Right. If I have that intention, then the only thing I'd be asking them is why like have you tried this, have you tried that, have you figured this out, have you tried going to a helper, have you tried going to a student counselor, have you tried doing this? If my mindset was solve their problem, no, right? My mindset is get to know them better. What helped you evaluate that this school would be the right school for you? Okay, that just the fact that their client would answer that question, that answer will help them recognize, help them evaluate the resources that they have that was in their mind when they made this decision, right? And again, this is just an example for this is just a one example, right? You can have multitudes of situations and sometimes where I get in trainings is this mindset sometimes that okay, what do I how can I ask these questions? Right? Like, how do I get my mind to really get an understanding of how can I ask these questions? And I'll be very honest, each situation will require you to come up with certain questions on the spot, right? There are X number of clients, X number of therapists. There is no way I can know every situation and tell someone कि इस situation में ये पूछना, इस situation में ये पूछना, इस situation में ये पूछना. Not possible, not practical, not even like, it's not even real, right? What I can share from my experience in training therapists is that if you have the right intention, right, you will ask the right question. If your intention is, and this is where the day one training kind of comes in about knowing yourself and all of those stuff, is that if your intention is to get to know the client and not judge them, right? Because remember day one, I don't know, day one biases. अगर आप अपने biases को जानते हो, and if you know your biases and you're not judging them and you're kind of saying to them, okay, I want to get to know you better, right? What will happen is that your body or your mind will automatically ask questions based on the information that gets you to know them better, right? As compared to, I'm here because the client asked me to solve their problem. I'm supposed to solve their problem, and this is what I need to do. And that's I have to talk about their maslas, and that's the only way I'll give them value, right? Have biases that effectively improve your therapeutic treatment. Clients are not broken. Clients are not broken. No one is come. My bias. It's my bias again. I'm just saying, sharing my bias here. Clients are not broken, right? They are sometimes sad and going through emotions, and they have sometimes thoughts which are intense, and I'm not better than them, they're not better, I'm not less than them, they're not better than me, nothing. We're here to create relational safety, and I as a therapist am trained and skilled to ask the right question so that they can better understand themselves and their body can autocorrect, right? The body will autocorrect, right? And I think our last day is going to be on somatic. And so that's when hopefully you guys will kind of really see all the work that's about like the body. There's nothing is broken in the client. Even if they believe it, that comes from their cognition based on their environment. अगर किसी का environment उनको ये मुस्तकिल बताता है कि I'm not enough, I'm not enough, I'm not enough. Is it broken for them to think that way that they're not enough? No, it's the environment's result, right? So I need to see that. And so, what can help you improve your Socratic questioning? being mindful of your intentions about what is it that you're delivering in the therapeutic relationship. And when you ask the right questions, your intention in everything is to help the client to get them to understand themselves better. And if that's what really happens, you will notice your CBT game will go like on some other level, man. Not just CBT game, man. This will help you develop your therapy game at some other level. Your efficiency, effectiveness will go on some other level, right? So I really hope that with all of these three different tools, your understanding of CBT in terms of the thought, behavior, emotions, and situations, right? The tools that you are in terms of the manual, these are some of the tools that we have. You will be having more tools that you will be gathering on top of yourself, with you along with yourself. And finally, Socratic questioning. Socratic questionings will come with right intention and a lot of practice. What is a really good tool sometimes that you can do is that you can ask a friend and ask the friend to narrate a situation, right? And all you do is you ask questions about the situation. That's it. Without the urge to solve a problem for them. Just tell me more, tell me more, tell me more, right? Like obviously not in that questioning, but a really rich questioning you can ask yourself. And what you will see is that the person will start to think and evaluate and be more reflective and actually get to understand themselves better, which will by default create that mechanism and agent of change within them. And that's what hopefully CBT can do. And I hope that this was a little bit more efficient in or effective in terms of the trail of the work that we're kind of covering. So we have done burnout, we have done what do you call it, boundaries, we have done humanistic, now we have done CBT, and to next time we're going to do Gestalt, right? So Gestalt is going to be a super fun one as well because Gestalt has its own kind of magic, I feel, that kind of happens. And I really hope that those people who are following this course or this series or, on a regular basis, there's so much value in kind of just like connecting all the dots together, right? Because you have after CBT, when you remember all of this content and you put it in a Gestalt setting, you can really get to sort of see the value of it, right? Because then Gestalt work will lead us into, I think after Gestalt, we're going into like a lot of the psychodynamic work that's going to be happening. So getting transferences in. After that, we have grief, addiction, and I'm definitely going to put in developmental immaturity in that also. So we have a whole trail of stuff that we're going to get to. I hope this was helpful for you guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next Friday, which is going to be like I think no, next Friday is not the Eid Friday. The one after that's going to be the Eid Friday. So take care, guys, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time on Friday. Okay.